Now the Keihin carb that we're going to be cleaning out today has come off of a Beta Evo, and it's got one of these silicone hoses. Now these are good mainly because they're a lot more flexible than the standard hoses, so it allows you to remove the carburetor from your bike a lot easier. Turn the carb upside down to drain the fuel into a suitable container. We're going to use this excess fuel just to give the carb a bit more of a clean on the outer. Then you want to undo the two bolts holding the float bowl on. We like to replace the two original bolts that use a Phillips head to these Allen key ones. The original Phillips heads are quite soft and can easily be rounded, which is a bit of a pain. Once the two bolts are removed, you should be able to remove the float bowl. With the Keihin, you just have to do a slight twist. Next, we're going to remove the floats. To do that, you're going to need to remove the float pivot pin. We swage one end of the pin so it doesn't just fall out. From standard, they do move and they can be lost quite easily, so that just prevents you from losing it, especially if you're doing an event like the Scottish 6-day trial where you might have to take your carb off in the middle of a moor. You definitely don't want to be losing that pin. Next up, you're going to want to remove the main jet using a 10mm spanner. Then you're going to want to remove the pilot jet with a small flat-headed screwdriver. With that same flat-headed screwdriver, you're going to want to remove the air screw. Before you remove it, you're going to want to count where your air screw is set at. To do this, you turn the air screw in until it stops, counting the number of turns, and then make a note of that, and that's your setting. In this case, it was 2 turns. And now you're able to remove the air screw and the spring. Now there's one more piece in the carb body that we want to remove, and that is the atomizer needle guide. Now this normally doesn't have to be removed and cleaned, but it is a part that sometimes can fall out when you're cleaning your carb, so it's something that you need to take note of and make sure that you've not lost it. To remove it, use something non-metallic. We use a big cocktail stick. Just make a note of which way it fits. Now there's a couple of ways of cleaning out the carb body. Personally, we use compressed air, but you can use carburetor cleaner or sonic cleaners, such like that. But this is just the way we prefer to do it. Blow through all the hoses, pipes and outside, especially the air screw hole. Pull the choke up and on and blow through again. Same again, blow out your float bowl, making sure there's nothing left in there. Make sure the float bowl gasket is set in the recess correctly. Then we're going to clean the air screw and the spring. And blow through all the jets. Now we're going to clean the main jet out, but we're just going to remove it from its housing. Then we're going to clean all those jets out. The needle guide fits in with the chamfered edge upwards towards the needle and slide. Again, use something non-metallic so it doesn't get damaged to push it back in place. Next up, we're going to fit the idle jet. Now you must fit the idle jet before the main jet, as it won't fit in once the main jet's put in place. Don't over tighten any of these jets. You can easily damage them as they're made from soft material. Now we need to reinstall the main jet. You're going to need a 10mm for this. And then you're going to need a 7mm for the final jet. Hook the needle valve over the float tab. Gently position the floats in the carb. Then put the pivot pin back in place. A good base setting for your float height is that the carb body runs parallel with the float. So when the floats are just closing the needle valve without compressing the valve spring, they should run parallel with the body. Refit the float bowl by carefully placing the overflow pipe between the main jet assembly and the float in a twisting motion. Make sure the float bowl gasket doesn't fall out. Do the 2 retaining bolts back up. Again, they only need to be pinched tight. Refit the air screw with the spring. Screw the air screw all the way in, and then we need to unscrew it 2 full turns for the correct setting for this bike. And then put all your hoses back in the correct places. And there you have it, the carburetor is cleaned. Whilst it's all apart, we always clean out the throttle slide and the needle, and we'll show you how it goes back together. The cable nipple sits in the slide, and the white plastic plug on the end of the spring prevents the needle coming out. This white plastic piece will only fit one way. When this is all fitted back on the bike, make sure the slide is moving freely, and that when you turn your bike on full lock both ways, you've got a bit of free play and that the slide snaps back in place every time.